Learn how to get started with Azure Front Door in this edition of Azure Tips and Tricks. You want your application to be globally available, performant and secure, right? An easy way to do that in Azure is by using Azure Front Door. This is a service that acts as a load balancer and firewall in front of your application. Here in the Azure portal, you can see that I have two web apps. I've also deployed a very simple website to these web apps that I'll use to demonstrate the power of Azure Front Door. This web app is hosted in the West US data center. I've deployed a variation of my website in it that says, this app is in West US, and the other one is hosted in West Europe and says that it is hosted there. Let's create an Azure Front Door. We'll do that here and search for Azure Front Door. And there it is. By the way, you can create an Azure Front Door from here and also from the Azure CLI. Here we go. So this looks good. Let's pick my existing resource group. And now I can configure the Azure Front Door. I can configure it here completely, and I can also change this configuration once it is created. We'll start by adding a front-end host. This is the unique URL that we can use to navigate to this front door. This URL is tipsandtricks.azurefd.net, and of course, you can also bind custom domain names to this URL. Okay, that's the front-end host. Now we need to add at least one backend pool. A backend pool is something that Azure Front Door can send traffic to. In our case, this backend will consist out of two web apps. The backend pool probes the backends on an interval to see if they are healthy. It's important to set this interval to a small value, so that Front Door knows quickly if a backend is down and that it shouldn't route traffic to that backend anymore. So, after typing in a name, I'll add a backend to this pool. And here, I can even say that this backend is an app service and then pick the right one. I can configure more properties of the backend as well, including some things that can be used for routing. Okay, let's add the other web app to the pool as well. This is also an app service. And this needs to be the Europe web app. Alright, that's it. Now for the last piece, adding a routing rule. This maps the front-end host URL to a backend. You can also create custom routes if you want. We'll leave this as is and add it. That's it. Let's create the Azure Front Door. This can take a while, so I'll skip to when this is done. Alright, the deployment is finished, and here is the Azure Front Door. And here you can see the front-end host URL. Let's go to it. This shows the Europe web app. That is because I am in Europe, and Front Door routes me to the most performant application in the backend pool. That's this one, so that works well. Alright, let's try something else. I'll stop the Europe web app and see what Front Door does. I can do that right here from the dashboard in the Azure portal. That's a pretty neat shortcut, right? That stops the web app. Let's go to the front-end URL again and see what it does. And there we go. Now it routes me to the US web app. Azure Front Door routed me to the most performant web app and routed me to a web app that was up and running. And this was very easy to set up. Go check it out.